Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Outdoors with MSA with Anthony Jones and myself, John Abernathy. Today we have a very special guest, Dr. Grant Woods. How are you, sir?
Man, I'm great, guys. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for allowing me to be your guest.
Awesome. Hey,
It's
Doc,
a pleasure.
I've been following you for 3 years now, Dr. Grant, and you are all about uh, habitat restoration, providing quality nutrients for deer, turkeys. But if a lot of people may not know about you, and I'm sure there's thousands upon thousands that do, but could you go
Yeah.
ahead and just give a brief little bio of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So I'm in the Ozark Mountains today, and I'm an Ozark Mountain native. That's Southwest Missouri. For those that don't know, largest mountains between the Smokies and the Rockies. So that's our little claim to fame, I guess. Uh, Grew up in this area. There were no turkeys when I started, thinking about it. And then MDC, Missouri Department of Conservation, restored turkeys. But what really got me going when I was 6 years old, first grade, my dad and I had built some rabbit traps just out of scrap barnwood and whatever. And of course, that's my big trap line. I was like a Yukon trapper, and it's winter's cold. I was raised on a small farm and I was running a little trap line. And I'd heard at the barber shop or somewhere they're going to restock deer in the area. And I don't know why. I guess the right word might be I fantasized I might see a deer someday. Never thought about hunting them. And running that trap line one cold snowy morning, I come up on a female fawn that had been shot in one of our little fields. And ever since then, I've just been passionate about deer and very aggressively against poaching, trespassing, people that abuse a resource. So
Yes, sir.
that kind of started it. And first guy in the family to go to school. And I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew I wanted to work with deer. I thought that meant a game warden or, I don't know what that meant. And just kept following that passion and ended up working with deer my whole career. We've been incorporated 31 years. And when my oldest daughter's about to graduate college, and when she was younger, I'd come home from a trip consulting and sitting on the floor, split leg, rolling the ball back and forth like parents do. And phone rang. And as soon as the phone rang, she said, "Daddy," because I was traveling so much. That's how she knew me, through a phone call, and just crushed me. And I said, "Man, I got to come up another way, make a living." So we thought maybe the internet was kind of coming around. Thought maybe if we, man, if we share our techniques or what we learned, someone might come along beside us. And that was 600 and some odd episodes ago. So we produce a show, and a lot like you all. I mean, we produce a new show every week, 52 weeks out of the year, and we've never missed an episode in all these years, and never shown a repeat. So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
you know what it's like. You know what it's like.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's tough.
it is. It can be tough. Uh,
Yeah,
so,
easy for us because I just do what I'm doing, and the camera guys follow me around. So they think I'm all crazy. I'm out there, what I'm doing, hacking, squirting, or planting, or turkey hunting, or whatever. I just do what I'm doing, and they hopefully stay quiet while they're following me around.
Yeah, that's our issue. We are the cameraman, the planner, the tracker.
Yeah.
We try to do it all ourselves. So sometimes the footage is it's a bit shaky.
Oh
Um,
yeah, they don't
so
trust me with cameras, guy. They don't trust. I'm not that high up the totem pole. They don't trust me with that.
we shouldn't be either, but nobody else stepped in, so we here we are.
so, Dr. Grant, uh, I started implementing trapping 2 years ago
Uh-huh.
on our lease, and I've had some success doing it, catching bobcats,
Sure.
coons, possums, skunks. Haven't caught
Beavers.
but one
Um,
coyote,
he
ton of
has
beavers.
this war. He has a whole war going on with beavers right now, Dr. Grant.
Yeah.
But my question is what else could somebody, say a turkey hunter, do to better quality their habitat for turkeys? Here across the southeast, from as far as Missouri to Florida, we're hurting for turkeys.
No doubt. No doubt. Yeah, turkeys are in trouble, and there are several issues, but certainly predation is way up the list. And like Ryan, is probably the main thing because I have pretty good habitat. Another is, it's two or three. I don't think it's below three anywhere.
Right.
But turkeys need we for turkeys are great survivalists. I mean, they eat insects and little snakes and lizards and little frogs, whatever. You open enough of them up, you find all kind of stuff in there. Where they're short throughout much of the turkey's range is high quality nesting and brooding habitat. And and some people say, well, if you have that, you don't need predator control. And I want to clarify that right now. And I think I have an illustration that will make everyone understand this. If I had a bunch of turkeys in my living room here and I fed them and didn't let the dog chase them, they'd do fine. There's no predators in the poultry house, and there's plenty of feed, and 30,000 of those rascals live in there. You know, but you put 4 coons in a 30,000 poultry house, and I'm going to guarantee you that first night, a whole bunch of them be dead.
Right.
A whole bunch. Because like most predators, if they can kill easily, they don't just kill like Bambi says. They don't just kill what they need and then say, oh, I'm sorry. Let me do a little ritual here because I killed you. No, man, it's fun. They're out there killing and grabbing and smacking.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're working to balance the predator prey populations, then I'd say the very next thing to do, or even more important, is nesting and brooding habitat. So let's define those so people know what we're talking about. Nesting is cover about 0 to 2 feet up. So I see that the screensavers where it's called right behind you guys. That shows a high, not to be mean, but a high graded open stand of hardwoods.
Yes,
I'm seeing right over your shoulder multi-stem trees, which means that come from a stump cut. Someone had harvested that recently, and there's several stems going out from where a stump used to be. And when I look up, that whole canopy is shaded out. I mean, that canopy is just thick. And if you look at it, and I'm glad y'all have that. It's a perfect example. All the limbs are reaching up for sun. They're not spread out. Like when you see a tree in a church parking lot or something like that, there's nothing around it. The limbs all reach out. Those limbs are all reaching up. They're way too competitive. And not only is that, so no sun's getting down to the ground. It's just bare leaves down there on the ground. And turkey's going to huddle up next to a tree there, if that's all there is around there, and try to nest. And super easy for a predator to find. Pardon me.
Let me see. I have a few more. I'm trying to see if there's a good example. Here's another.
Yeah, that's a closed canopy forest for sure. I mean, if you're a turkey and you're dropping eggs on the ground there, it's like putting them on a plate in front of me after I've been out all night long shooting deer. Oh, I didn't mean out season, folks. I've been out all night gigging or bow fishing or whatever, and then I go to Waffle House in the morning. Those eggs and biscuits and gravy are going down, right? And that's what those eggs are looking like on that forest floor. So another thing is, of course, scent. and I always give credit's due. Mississippi State, decades ago, come out with what's called the wet hen theory. And I don't know if you've ever turkey hunted in the rain, but if you kill an old tom when it's been raining, they're stinky. You throw that thing on the shoulder and you can't walk fast enough to get away from the odor, man. I mean, it's nasty. Well, a hen gets wet and she's out there in that open country, unlike what you're showing me now. Thank you for doing that. Right. That scent's just drifting at ground level. And any coon, fox, possum, bobcat, domestic dog, domestic cat, coyote, whatever gets downwind of that thing, going right to the nest because that's an easy meal. Right. So now we got something that looks like there's some ground cover, some thickets and whatnot back there. A hen gets in there. I'm sorry. She's not only visually hidden, but you think about it, there's more things to kind of block the scent from traveling too far. And I'll illustrate that to all the deer hunters out there. If you hunt in thick stuff, your scent just kind of eddies back and forth. You hunt out on the plains in Kansas, man, you know where your wind's going. It's not eddying around. It's not swirling, as we say. Well, in there, that little scent is sort of a possum or coon a couple hundred yards away probably doesn't smell a hen. So thick cover, 0 to 2 feet. And why about 2 feet? That hen likes to do what we call periscope up, look around for predators, stick her head back down. The poults are running around in cover. Even more important than this, we want umbrella habitat. And umbrella habitat is like this. You got a stem down here, lots of space for poults to run around, but cover for avian predators up here. Let's don't forget the avian predators. And you all will get hate mail, hopefully not me on this one, but, we ain't shot chicken hawks in decades, just to be honest, right? I was watching Mayberry RFD the other day, and Andy put a guy in jail, and he got good and got out, and he's coming to town. Everybody's afraid he's going to hurt Andy, but he gives him a shotgun to thank him for correcting his life, for getting him on the right path. And Andy says, and this is on national TV, and no one cared back then. This is a great shotgun. I'm going to use this to shoot them chicken hawks. Of course, you said that, now you go to federal prison, right? And
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
not saying we need to shoot avian predators, but I'm saying we must have habitat to protect against them.
They are a problem. I live in a neighborhood, and whenever a cat or an animal, whatever animal gets hit in the road, you have hundreds of these things just circling, waiting to come and
There's a bunch of them. I mean, let's just think about this. And this is all a huge blessing for conservation. We've restored avian predators. That's a huge work. They were on the brink.
Yep.
Eagle populations up are many, many folds than what they were not too long ago. I was just down in Florida, as you know, chasing turkeys, and we had a juvenile bald eagle come in on some jakes. I mean, jakes, not poults, jakes. Missed him on the swipe, but landed right in front of him, and there's a standoff. Fortunately for me anyway, the jake got away, but don't ever kid yourself. These avian predators can take out an adult. Last year, turkey hunting at my place here, had a decoy set up, had a tom coming in. Tom's coming into my left, so I'm focused over here. Probably looks right on the screen. And so I'm this way. I happen to have pretty good peripheral vision. I'm blind as a bat, but I can see out of the corner of my eye here. And I kind of see something kind of startle me, and I hear this thunk, a plastic thump. We had a GoPro set up on our decoy, and this red tail comes in, talons open, hits the decoy on the neck. Well, that was a dead hen. We just so happened to have the GoPro in the right place. That was a dead hen. How many times does that happen daily with wild birds out there?
Oh, a bunch.
So there's a lot of things. And then snakes. If people don't use prescribed fire, just being honest, snake populations tend to build up. All that leaf litter, holding critters, rats, rodents out there, okay? I love to read, and my favorite subject is reading the early explorers. Everyone talks about Lewis and Clark, but it seems in every little area, there was a trapper, someone that liked to keep a journal. And those are lesser known books. In my area, it was a guy named Schoolcroft, and he kept a journal, and he was literate. There were rough, you might call them mountain men or trappers here before, but he was the first guy to come through the Ozarks here that we know of that kept a written journal. And one thing that really interested me, he talks about just seeing thousands of turkeys and deer. There were buffalo and elk here and all that stuff, Native Americans, of course. But he'd get up in December, he'd sleep in a cave, whatever, just exploring the area. In so many days, he'd get up and say, smoky again, must be burning. And Native Americans would burn off habitat. We know that from other journals because they knew they might burn it. And next year when it greened up, all the buffalo were coming right there. They were just making a hunting ground.
Right.
And they never, this is interesting, all these early explorers I've read, Daniel Boone, all these people, never talk about ticks. Y'all know what ticks are, right?
Oh, yes,
they
sir.
never talk about ticks. And I think that's because there was so much fire that it kept the tick populations in check.
Okay.
So we got nesting habitat, and I want to walk this through. So turkeys have, depending on who states, and this is just averages, it varies a little bit, but about 10 eggs per hen.
Yep.
She'll lay one day, next day another, and so 10 days the eggs are on the ground from the first one, okay? And then she's going to incubate for 28 days. If they make it through incubation, that's 38 days on the ground that you hope one of these mini predators, snakes, coons, possums, coyotes, bobcats, all these different things, skunks, foxes, don't get right downwind of that nest. Okay?
Right.
Think how many critters are on the ground out there. Mm-hmm. And then they hatch. And then the poults got to get about 14 days old before they're big enough to fly and not sleep on the ground. Mom stays on the ground and they huddle up under the wings till about 14 days. Add all up from the first egg, that's 52 days on the ground. 52 days. We're hoping that a predator doesn't get close enough downwind to smell them for 52 days.
It's a long time.
So that's why we have to have good nesting habitat. Let's say we get there. Man, we make it. We've had a successful nest. Now we need brooding habitat. A lot of land anymore is fescue pasture, Bahia grass pasture down south, all these things, Those those pasture grasses are so thick, little poults can't walk through them. I mean, little poults aren't big, folks. Everyone sees adult turkeys because that's what they're thinking about. We're talking about some with legs an inch long, walking through 6-inch, very thick fescue. They can't make it. They're dead right there. And there's not many bugs and that kind of stuff. So brooding habitat is native grasses or forbs, ragweed is perfect. And those chicks want insects, high protein, ants, spiders, stuff like that. So you need good insect habitat that is thin enough that the poults can walk through. And ideally, you have that next to cover. So when I'm managing specifically for turkey, we're burn areas during the growing season. That'd be August, September, depending on where you are and how dry it gets. And next spring, that comes up with flowers, forbs, stuff like that, wildflowers. Awesome poult habitat, awesome brooding habitat. Next to that, if we have permission from the landowner, we're burned during this time of year, what we call the dormant season before it greens up. When you burn during the spring, early spring, late winter, that tends to favor native grasses, thick nesting habitat. Poults get out, and native grasses, if you know, they're kind of a clump, then bare ground, then a clump, bare ground, easy for those poults to move around in, but predators don't see them. Then they get over there to where that late summer burn, perfect brooding habitat. So you can manage for turkeys, and I assist several landowners do, and it's amazing how many turkeys you can see in good, well-managed habitat.
I've noticed substantial population increase on our lease because of me trapping. We got good nesting habitat as well.
Sure.
There's that one spot over there where we had the truck camera. It had some nice native tall grass that wasn't really thick. But that's also the thing with native habitat nowadays. Like it's getting harder and harder to find native habitat here in America with everybody planting everything else.
And let's talk
trees
about
are hard to find.
Yeah, let's talk about planting. If you're a soybean corn type guy, or you get free seed from some of the conservation organizations because it's a year old, great program, right? Everybody's heart's in the right place. But if you notice, that seed is usually like bright orange or green, real bright green. Well, bright colors are always a warning, folks. Flashing lights, sirens, blue lights behind you, real bright. A skunk, black and white. A skunk is black and white. It has no defense but spraying, and that's real expensive to make those chemicals. So I believe the creator made it that way. So anything that sees it knows, oh man, I don't want to mess with that. I could kill it easy, but I'm going to smell really nasty if I do, right?
Right.
So the chemical companies, the seed companies, put those real bright chemicals on there, and no one reads labels anymore. People don't read anymore. If you read that label, the first line says danger, hazardous to wildlife. And you're spreading it out on the ground. How many times you kill a turkey in ag country, cut the crop open, it's got green, orange seeds, because turkeys are out there following a no-till drill down the road, scratching them out. Farmers complain, turkey's eating up all my seed, turkey's eating up my seed. And that coating is a very powerful insecticide. And it's based out of nicotine, neonics. And I just want your audience to Google birds, just birds, songbirds, turkeys, whatever, birds, and neonics. Neo, Neonics. Neonics are highly toxic nicotine, and how they impact insects. In the old days, we used to dart deer with nicotine, and it just paralyzes them. They're still alert. They'll be looking at you when you're putting the collar on them, but they're not feeling any pain. That's what nicotine does at that dosage level. So insects, this nicotine is put on, so it's a variety of nicotine, put on the seed coating so thick that it transfers through the plant. And a corn borer or whatever starts eating on the root or whatever, it gets some of that, and it paralyzes. It doesn't just outright kill it like you might spray a tick with something. It just paralyzes it. So you're a turkey poult, and you're week old, and you need all the insects you can catch. and you walk into a bean or cornfield and you got these wobbly, look like they're drunk insects on the ground that got some neonic in them, you're going to eat that one first, right? Because you can catch it. It's like wiggling a grasshopper from a bluegill. Blunk.
Right.
Well, they're getting loaded up with neonics. I'm not aware of any specific research on turkeys because the songbird people have a whole lot more money. But if you Google songbirds and neonics, you would get loaded up with how dangerous they are. And we're planting on 95% plus of the corn planted in America is covered with neonics. 95%. Wonder why turkey populations are struggling in some areas?
That's crazy.
So there's a lot of factors. There's not one. I mean, it's not just predation. There's a lot of factors going on, and the good answer is we can clean all this stuff up.
Yeah,
We can do a better job. This is not the sky is falling. This is, hey, we need to get busy.
Yeah, I agree. We've talked about burning, and you mentioned briefly on hack and squirting. Could you go a little bit more into depth on how you would open the canopy, for example, for the woods that are directly behind me?
Yeah, so if you page back to that screen saver that was just high graded hardwoods, I would go in there and how I do hack and squirt. And let's just say, facetiously speaking, that first obvious tree there is a big red oak. I don't know what it is. I can't tell from that picture, but let's just say it's a nice red oak. Then I would go to those little trees to my right on the screen right, and I would take everyone asks me what herbicide to use. Well, it depends on what tree you're trying to terminate. Different herbicides impact different species. But Craig Harper, good guy, Dr. Craig Harper, come up with a formulation that covers most tree species, not all, but most. And I'll gladly share Craig's work. It's 50% Garlon 3A, and you want to use the 3A. There's a 4A Garlon. I won't get into all the chemistry, but that's ground active. You spill it, it might kill that white oak you're trying to save through the roots. 3A is not too ground active. Okay. 40% water. And when you're getting water, folks, don't dip it out of the creek or the pond because all the ions in that water will bond to the herbicide and won't be very effective. You want clean water. The cleaner the water, the hotter the herbicide is going to be. And then 10% Arsenal AC. Now, I told you the brand names, but the generics work just fine. I'm just telling you so you can find the right stuff. Arsenal AC. Now, Arsenal AC is also ground active, but you're only using 10%. And when you hack and squirt, let's say this is the tree, you simply just take a hatchet and you come in at about 30 degrees. You want to make a little cup. And what a lot of people don't realize, in the center of a hardwood tree, the only thing that's living is the cambium, that little green layer right below the bark. It's called the inner bark. The center of the tree on hardwood's dead as a doornail. That's just structural support. That's like the concrete holding the tree up. Those cells grew, got really hard, and died. They're there just brick after brick after brick holding the tree up, if you think about cell structure. So no need to put an herbicide in the center of a tree. That's just wasting money. So when you hack the tree, you come in at 30, you make a little cup. If you think about it, when you hack, you cut across that cambium layer a lot more than a drill bit because you're cutting a bigger surface area of the cambium layer. And you just squirt with the squirt bottle about 1 milliliter, which I found is usually about one trigger pull on most squirt bottles you buy at Stuff Mart. I've tested several. You just want one that doesn't leak. And I make a hack about every 3 inches. If the tree's 3 inches around, I make one hack. If it's 6 inches, I make two. So every 3 inches, I make a hack. And Dr. Harper's formulation is effective on a lot of common species. So when I'm personally doing a hack and squirt, here's what I do. I go find the best tree I definitely want to save in that area. And then I terminate all the trees around there that are competing with this canopy. You're doing the hack and squirt to open up so some sun can get to the forest floor. That's what you're doing, because without sunshine getting to the forest floor during the growing season, that's obviously a winter picture behind you. There's no leaves on the canopy.
Yes.
When you get leaves on the canopy during the growing season, those leaves are the perfect photoreceptor. Elon Musk could never make photochargers as God did leaves. And those leaves are designed to capture all the sunshine, not let much get through, because they have to photosynthesize. That's how trees or soybeans, whatever, make energy, is through photosynthesis. So you're removing some of that canopy, so the limbs on that tree you're leaving can expand, make more leaves to photosynthesize more. That's the easiest way to get more acorns, is take the competing trees around an oak tree.
Right.
And let that oak tree spread, make more leaves, more synthesis, more acorns. So I want to open up the canopy to get some grasses and forbs growing on the floor. Then you're going to use dry fire. If you don't, it's just going to come a hardwood sapling mess down there.
Okay. How soon would you
And
prescribe fire?
A lot of variables. Let's back up a second. Hack and squirt works best when the leaves are fully formed, not now, until the first leaves start changing colors on the species of tree you want to control. Double girdle, here's my tree, and I take a chainsaw or some other tool. And again, I'm just cutting down through the cambium, not the whole tree, just cutting through the cambium, through the inner bark. The cambium is the tree's circulatory system. You may remember from 7th grade biology, phylum and xylem and phloem and that stuff. It gets technical. Just cut through that inner cambium, and you do it. Double girdle means you do it twice. You do one here and go up 4 inches, do it again. Cut all the way through, like put 2 tourniquets on that tree, but you're cutting all the way through there. And you can use that year round. It's most effective if you put that same herbicide in the top girdle. It works better in the top girdle than the bottom girdle. Some species will die with just double girdling and not using herbicide, but not all. So to be safe, use a little herbicide in there. And I mix in my herbicide. It's really inexpensive, about $20 a bottle, give or take. One bottle goes a long way. Herbicide quality dye. I use blue color because blue shows up in timber really well. That way you know which trees you've treated with herbicide and which one you haven't. By the way, don't do what I do, learn the hard way. Learn from others' mistakes, mainly my mistakes. But when you girdle or hack and squirt a tree, you got just a couple of minutes to put the herbicide in. You can't girdle all one day, put your chainsaw down, come back the next day to the squirt bottle, because so much sap will fill up those cuts that the herbicide won't get into the circulatory system. Sap is the tree's way of food itself. So it works best with 2 guys, one guy cutting, one guy herbicide, and so you can just keep moving through, and you're not bending over and picking up your herbicide bottle all the time.
Now, would you prefer to do a hack and squirt method compared to a hinge cut? Yep.
Well, isn't hinge cutting more for deer?
Say again.
Isn't hinge cutting more for deer when you're trying to manage deer populations?
People try to make cover out of hinge cut, but let's just think about this. There's some guys that really promote hinge cutting. I'm not mad at anyone. I just want America to think. That's just kind of like right now, the state America's in. I'm just like, can we stop the nonsense and just think? I want to start a hashtag that's just think or die, something like that, right? I'm getting way off here, but anyway, don't get me going.
Okay.
So you cut a tree basically in half and lay it over. God built limbs with a specific pheromone called auxin, a hormone, to reach for the sun. You lay a tree over, but it's still alive. Where's my camera going? Come here, camera. You got to back up. It won't show. And the limb's like this. And the first year it gets sunshine. All those limbs start growing up, right? Mm-hmm. And in the South, in 2 years, those limbs are 6 to 10 feet tall, depending on the species. They're totally out of reach. They're totally out of reach of a deer to browse on. And by the way, who wants their deer eating splinters?
Right.
I hear all this stuff about gotta have woody browse. Really? I don't know any woody browse in Kansas, South Dakota, North Dakota, Eastern Wyoming, and everyone wants to go deer hunting there. You seen much woody browse in Iowa? How many people want an Iowa tag? Again, can we think just a little bit? No. Woody browse is a lot of marketing, but there's not a lot about. You're eating sawdust, folks. There's some minerals in there and stuff, but it's you go out in the woods with your little survival hat on and start chewing on twigs, and let me know how long you last out there.
What I like,
I'm not a hinge cut fan. Here's why I use hinge cutting. I got 2 deer trails, and one of them, I need one of them to be abandoned so all the deer are walking closer to my tree stand. That's a good use of hinge cutting. And as far as cover, again, all those limbs are growing up, and in 2 years, it's just wide open underneath there. And I published this a while back, and I got this hate mail. Well, you go maintain them. Well, let's think about this. I could kill one tree, get sundown, and get grasses and forbs, cover and food. Boom. It's going to happen. Or I could hinge cut, come back 2 years later, and where I cut one stem, now I have to cut hundreds to maintain it, to keep it down and grow. So, Grant, not hinge cut fan. If it works for you, great. I keep hearing how great it is. I think a lot of people know I'm a consultant. We will help over 50 landlords this year. We've already helped like 30 small this year. We see a lot of progress.
That's another thing. So I mean, you don't have to tell me this if you don't want to. How do you put a price on something like that when somebody's like, hey, come out here, I want you to manage my land? It's not, you can't really measure it. Now I know people are paying for your knowledge, your time, but it's like, how do you put a price tag on that?
I want to share a true story with you. You can go to Dr. Google and confirm anything I say, folks. We've been incorporated 31 years. I've had 2 kidney transplants. Lying's just not part of my life, man. Marketing lying. I've been very blessed in life. If I don't work, I'm okay, folks. I don't mean this wrong, but I love what I do. Yeah. My oldest daughter's named Raleigh. That stands for Dweller by the Deer Meadow. My youngest daughter's named Ray, R-A-E, which is Hebrew for doe. Deer impact everything I do from age 6 on. I love what I do. I've been incorporated 31 years. If you can make a mistake, I've made it 20 times. I learned from experience. Henry Ford, of course, was the first guy to kind of come up with the modern assembly line. Yeah. And he realized that the electricity might go out. You can Google this, folks. And if it went out, his laborers are standing around. He spent all his money, but he ain't building no Model A's. Nothing's getting done. So he had a big generator built. And generators weren't all computer controlled. Computer wasn't a word then, folks. Okay. So there was all kind of switches and stuff that made this thing work. And it wasn't working. So we told staff, man, I need the best electrical engineer. What the heck the guy was? Best guy in town to fix this thing. Guy gets out there. Henry's standing there by him. And this is a long time ago, folks. Y'all weren't even born. Guy walks up there, flips one switch. Start her up. Starts up. Henry, man, you're the man. You're the best. You're the man. Send me a bill. That's all. I don't care how much. Just send me a bill, man, because I'm working now, or I'm seeing big deer now, or I'm seeing a bunch of turkeys now, or my crops are more profitable now. My timber stand's making more money now. That's what Henry said in automotive terms. Right. Great, man. I'll send you a bill. Now, this is back in the day. Send him a bill for $10,000. Henry about blew a gasket, pun intended. Wrote the guy and said, hey, man, this won't work. Send me another bill. Guy did. $10 for flipping the switch. $9,990 for knowing which switch to flip.
That's awesome.
If you've been doing it a long time, you know which switch to flip. And all properties are unique. That's why we call it site specific. So, what do we build? We look at acreage, how much time is it going to take this, how much we have to travel. Gas is high right now. How much we have to travel, those type of things. We don't have a set fee. Everyone wants our schedule. We just take it property by property.
Amen. I got a question, Dr.
And this is important. If you have a good consultant, if you have a good habitat manager, a good one, they will decline several opportunities because the client does not have realistic expectations. Hey, man, I got 30 acres right down here on the floor. You can't please that person. There's no way. Right. And you're gonna take their money, and then they're gonna say on the internet, know everything more. And that Grant Woods, man, I mean, he come down here, I ain't seen anything but a key deer. Well, of course, everything's but key deer. You're living on the Keys. Of course, you're seeing key deer. So we're kind of selective. You gotta have, and it's not where we work. It's I mean, we work from Florida to way north, Canada north. It's, do they have realistic goals and objectives for their property and their budget? You may own
Right.
10,000 acres, but you can't afford a tractor or, whatever, you don't have permission to cut trees. Granddad says you can't cut any trees, whatever it is. You have to be able to implement a plan, or there's no need to paying for a plan.
My property is choked out with mountain laurel. Now, my question for you is what would be the best way to remove? I'm sure there's mountain laurel in Missouri up in the Ozarks, but we're covered up.
There's not actually. That's it. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. That's a tough one. You can certainly terminate mountain laurel. There's some herbicides. You can hack. Mountain laurel's got about X number of stems per stump, right? I mean, it's a lot of work. But you can certainly open that up. Just one prescribed fire is not going to do it. It's going to take a herbicide application.
Right.
And it's usually a basal bark spraying the outside or an injection treatment, because mountain laurel leaves are kind of waxy. They don't take herbicide in real well.
Correct.
So you can thin that out. And there's a gazillion mountain laurel seeds there. So once you remove some, you're going to have to keep a prescribed fire rotation in there. And fire will control new seedlings. It just won't control the mature laurel. Or if you get it hot enough to control that, you're going to kill all the other trees.
How often would you recommend somebody prescribe fire in sections of their property?
It varies. How shorter growing seasons, less productivity, require fire less frequently. In Florida, there's guys burning every other year down there, barely keeping up with it. So it just depends on what's growing. The general rule of thumb is 3 to 5 years. I often burn every 2 years if my goal is high quality turkey habitat, because I want a lot of grasses and forbs, and I don't want it so thick that those poults can't get through there.
Right. That's awesome. And then one more question I had for you is, I understand some people might have thousands or hundreds of acres, but can you habitat manage 10 acres or 50 acres?
Yeah, sure. And in those situations, you're not trying to provide everything. You're not going to do it. And people say, call me up and say, man, I got 40 acres. How can I get deer to stay on my property? Fence. I mean, you're just not going to, right?
Right.
What you can
But you got to provide what's not around, right?
That's exactly right. You must provide the limited resource in that area. So when we talk about resources, we basically talk food, cover, water, and security. Security is different than cover. You've got a big briar patch behind your house. Looks like pretty good cover, but you train your beagles there every week. You run a pack of dogs through there every week. That's not security cover. So need to define those things a little bit. We work with a lot of 40-acre landowners. I mean, a lot. And we zoom out a mile or two, then go put boots. We always study our clients' land with various satellite images. I like to use HuntStand. That's kind of more of a whitetail app. Onyx isn't bad, but it's really good public land out west. You go elk hunting, that might work great, something like that. But HuntStand has really good tools for what I use, what I do with whitetail and turkey. But anyway, I'm going to zoom out a mile or two in each direction. Oh, this neighbor a quarter mile away has got a giant soybean cornfield, one or the other rotating around. I can't compete with summer food. I don't even. Why should I spend any money planting summer food? The farmer's feeding them. But once those crops are harvested and I got some good fall food plots, I'm going to see deer. That's just an example. Or, the whole area around me has been high graded. And if I really work on my oaks and let them expand their canopy and produce more acorns, I'm probably going to see more deer than average. And I'll back this up with an example, something that's real applicable and anyone can do. You can do this, folks, if you live close to your property. The University of Georgia did some research many years ago on the Itchaway. Itchaway was the guy who made Coca-Cola big. He didn't start it. He didn't come up with magic recipe, but he grew it from nothing to what it is, big. And when I was in grad school at the University of Georgia, he passed away and left this huge trust, endowment, whatever the financial term is, to the board of directors. to use this 28,000 contiguous acre quail hunting plantation to the best use of mankind. And he's a big
Wow.
quail hunter, so they made an ecological research station because Coke's out of Atlanta. They went to University of Georgia, said, "Can you help us design this?" And I was a young deer guy there, and hey, Woods, go down there and check it out. I mean, deer is low on the totem pole on quail plantation, very low. So I'm like the token guy. I'm the low man on the totem pole. I see the weed eater go around every day, you know. But while I'm down there, and then years later, I should say years later, I started doing more intensive research. And one of the researchers built, I think it was three or four 80-acre predator-proof pens, which meant they buried the web wire in the ground, I think a foot and a half or 2 feet, and 4 feet tall for 80 acres. Got a trapper in there and trapped out all the coyotes and bobcats out of the acres. Just because you build a fence don't mean they're all out there. One could be in there. All right. Did some other stuff, and then had a bunch of GPS collared does wearing jewelry in the neighborhood. And when come fawning season, most of the does fawned and lived in that 80 acres because it's safer.
Right.
Yeah. You got 40 acres. You can't get all the coyotes, coons, possums, whatever off your land, but you can certainly reduce the density compared to your neighbors.
Right.
And critters were figured out safer. I mean, you know, if we're in Ukraine right now, God bless those Ukrainian people. If you're in Ukraine right now, we wouldn't just be lollygagging talking about deer. We'd be picking up a weapon looking for a rusky or something like that, right?
Right.
We would not be lollygagging. We'd be taking care of our safety and defending our nation. Well, we would go to a reduced area of predation or assault on us unless we were on the attack. Turkeys aren't on the attack. So we're going to go to the area where there's less assault on them. So if you can reduce, you know, significantly, you've got half the coons on your property than the neighbor has on theirs, where do you think the hens are going to nest? And where do you think the toms are going to come for a date? Where do you think the deer like to bed at night? So just stuff like that.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Mr. Grant. I really appreciate it.
Thank you all. Thank you all for what you do. And man, yeah, wildlife's fun. I love learning because I just tell you, for me, learning about soil health and wildlife and what makes them tick is really good lessons for life. You know, critters die, critters eat critters. I eat critters. I harvest critters. I get ticks on me. I've been snake bit once. You know, you learn a lot.
You learn a lot of common sense, which is not common anymore.
You know, you hope you do. You hope you learn it way. There's certainly a great opportunity to learn it. Let's say it that way. There's certainly a great opportunity to learn it.
Well, to hit on what you said earlier, when you're out there in the woods and like if you're out there in Missouri in some deep public land, think or die. If you don't think, you'll probably die.
Unfortunately, there's too many tragedies out there from people who didn't think, or you know, and there's accidents. Safe lines break when you climb in a tree stand, but those are very rare. If you're doing it right, I read recently, I don't remember the stats, so I'm not going to quote it, but basically there were more injuries per capita playing ping pong than hunting.
Wow.
And way more horse riding. Horse riding is extremely dangerous, folks. Gosh, I'm not a horse guy, but I'm certainly not now after I read that stat. Man, them horses wicked on people, but yeah, hunting's very safe, very, very safe.
It's as safe as you make it.
Before we get off here, you mentioned food plot one time, and so I want to talk about your buffalo blend system and your no-till. If you could go into that for a couple minutes, I'd really appreciate that.
So we come up with the buffalo name. Just again, I read these early explorers, and they're talking about how lush the prairie was and millions of animals. Literally, they estimate there were about 60 million buffalo on the Great Prairie, not counting all the woodland bison. If you get technical, bison, I call them buffalo because I grew up watching Custer and those old guys, right? But anyway, there were bison all the way in South Carolina and all over. Bison here in Missouri, but 60 million on the Great Prairie, and they're twice as big as a cow. So all this nonsense about cows causing global warming, I'm like, really? How come all them bison out there weren't causing that? I mean, again, just if we could think just a little bit thinking, it would go a long ways. But as we've learned more and really learned how the soil works and the water cycles, not just me, other researchers, all of us working together, I've kind of changed the name to the release process just because we're releasing creation's potential. It's all there. For a couple examples, above every acre on the planet is over 30 tons of nitrogen. Why would you ever buy nitrogen? It's right there. And on almost every acre on the planet above water, that is, there's about 10,000 pounds of phosphorus. Now, it's not all in plant available form. We didn't used to have synthetic fertilizer, and people ate and grew crops, not the big yield now, but it's really important to know this for human health. Our crops now are way less nutritious than they were before these synthetic fertilizers. Couple examples:
Cancer's going up
spinach
a lot
has
more too.
40% less iron in it now than it used to have. There are
Oh
oranges
wow.
now with no vitamin C. Why would you eat an orange without vitamin C? I mean,
Oh,
and that's because we've degraded soil quality. So the release process, the beautiful thing about it is you can restore soil quality. You can restore it. And just real simple, just go through the principles real simple here. If you think about the original Great Prairie, it was always covered. There were plants growing. Might be a fire come through, but it greened right up. It's always covered. Okay. There was a diversity of plant species. It wasn't a monoculture. One solid soybean, solid wheat, solid pine plantation. It was a diversity, oftentimes 100 or more species per acre. We've identified 176 different native species here on my land in the Ozarks after a lot of fire, cutting cedar, stuff like that. We didn't plant any of them. We didn't plant any. Those seeds were in soil, been laying there 70, 80 years. We cut down 70-year-old cedar trees by counting rings, let them lay 2 years, put a fire through there, and it is a mecca of wildflowers and grasses that we never paid a penny to plant. Um, Third, the soil was never disturbed. Buffalo might come through, chip up top quarter-inch, inch, whatever in big herd, but never deep till because the plant roots, insects, dung beetles, all these things, okay, we're tilling soil, letting the perfect amount of water and oxygen in there. And to illustrate this, everyone's seen this. You're driving down a highway in ag country, and there's a disc bare farm field, been disc before winter, and there'd be a pond of water standing out there. Now, doesn't disking loose the soil? Does it? No. And I can illustrate this really. You dig a post hole. Everyone dug a post hole, right?
yep.
Put your post in there. Never is there enough dirt to fill the hole up, right? Never. You got to go get some more dirt to fill the hole up. Now, you took all the dirt out of the hole, you fill half of it up with the post, and there's not enough dirt to go back. Well, that's what disking does. It destroys all the pore structure. It destroys all the pores, and plants need pores to function to get oxygen to the roots, water to the roots, water to infiltrate versus running over the top. So that was principle 3, no disturbance to the soil. Why no-till drills or just broadcasting seed works well. And 4, you always want armor on the soil. That's last year's crop. That's the dead mulch laying there covering soil. So when raindrops hit it, it's not compacting soil. It's shading the soil, keeping the temperature way down. People to use this system where they get 10 inches of rain a year, grow great crops, no irrigation. What could you do throughout much of the whitetail and turkeys range where it rains 30, 40, 50, 80 inches of rain a year? So I personally have not paid for any lime or fertilizer in 7+ years, except for a few test plots where I compare no fertilizer to fertilizer. But overall, no expenses. Is that such a blessing this year when fertilizer is twice as high as it was last year? So,
Wow.
and remember, nitrogen fertilizer is made primarily out of natural gas. You're putting a toxin on your land. Synthetic fertilizer is very acidic. Send it off, get it tested. It's just no wonder you got to keep paying more lime. You're putting acid on your soil. Of course, you got to put more lime on your soil. Decaying plants, that mulch layer I'm talking about, will neutralize the soil. There's a better way. And people say, well, why don't farmers use it? Farmers used to use it. It worked really good. And then they started getting marketing. We didn't know nitrogen fertilizer existed until Hitler started hiring scientists to build his bomb. Fortunately, we won the war before then. Those scientists come to America and say, we know how to build nitrogen, there's no use for it. That was literally the start, literally, of nitrogen fertilizer.
Wow. I didn't know that one.
Literally.
Wow. That's
So
awesome.
there's a better way. We can grow great crops. If I tool my laptop showed you out the window here, I'd show you a crop 30 yards off my yard. And I'll just tell you right now, my wife's yard, I can't say it out loud. She's in the house. My food plot, bright green right now. Fertilizer been on the yard, no fertilizer in the food plot.
I remember that.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's a better way, folks. And think about it. The whole water system is based on green plants. The whole water system is based on green plants. You got a tilled dead field 6 months, 7 months out of the year, depending on where you are, north, south. It's doing nothing but eroding. Nothing but eroding. And it's eroding the most valuable part. That top part's the most valuable part of soil. It doesn't erode 2 feet deep, folks. The most valuable part's the top soil, the top part. And it's got herbicide in it and fertilizer and neonics from the last crop, all this stuff. It's getting in our water system. We all live downstream. A healthy soil is the world's best filter. We can clean our water. You can Google the hypoxia zone. You know what the hypoxia zone is? Down the Gulf of Mexico, Mississippi River has this huge watershed, huge watershed.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Farm fields and other things are leaching in to that thousands of miles. There's a multi-thousand, hear me clearly, multi-thousand square mile area in the Gulf. Nothing alive, no fishing, nothing.
Oh, wow.
Because of all the nitrogen and other pollutants running down the stream. It stays on the ground. If you've got a living root in there sucking up nutrients, it's not going nowhere. You kill all those living roots, you leave your field dry all winter, it's going to leach out there.
Wow.
So there's a better way. That's the release process. In the ag world, they call it regenerative ag. More and more farmers are doing it. The farmers that do it put this in scale. This was last year. I'm sure the cost is up this year. Average farmer across America spent about $5.50 a bushel to establish, harvest, sell corn. So, buy seed, wear and tear on the tractor, diesel fuel, plant it, labor, all that stuff. Universities study this stuff. Harvest it, haul it to the market. $5.50 a bushel. Corn is $4 a bushel. Without government subsidies, they're losing money. That's
Right.
our tax dollars, folks. If you don't get that, that's our tax dollars. I'm pro farming. I'm very, very pro.
But doing it right.
The farmers that use regenerative ag have about $1.13 a bushel in it.
Oh, wow. That's
$3
awesome.
corn, mama getting a new Cadillac. Right? They're making
Amen
money.
to that. Amen.
They're making big money.
Yeah.
And then they plant a cover crop, which adds fertilizer, takes carbon out of the air, puts it in soil. Soil needs carbon, folks. We're talking about pulling carbon out of the air, and I'm not some big greeny guy. I'm a wildlife biologist. But the easiest way to pull carbon out of the air is not an electronic car. It's have a cover crop. And that pulls carbon out of the air, puts it back in the soil, deep in the soil, the bottom of the roots. And the reason carbon works like that, there's an economy in plants. Plants, God built them to take carbon out of the air, comes in a root, it leaks out a root, that's called root exudates. And the microbes, there's all this phosphorus we talked about, but it's not in a plant available form. Microbes or bacteria, microbes like a fancy word. You know how we all got these fancy words these days? Like when I was a kid, they were killer whales. Then Disney come along and they're orcas. They're the nice orca. But when they eat the other whales out there, they're a killer whale. Well, changing their name, they're still eating the snot out of everything. Changing their name didn't make them nice. They're killer whales. Come on, folks.
Right.
So anyway, these microbes or bacteria, they go in and out of plant. This is so cool. So cool. They go in and out of plant and they exchange that phosphorus they got out of soil, rocks, whatever, at a microbial level, but there's billions of them. In healthy soil, there are more microbes in a handful of soil than people on the planet, literally. Literally. Okay? They go in and out of plants and they get carbon from the plant, which they need. Our human bodies are over 70% carbon. We're over 70% carbon. Deer's over 70% carbon. Got to have carbon. Okay? These microbes go into plant roots and say, hey, I'll trade you some phosphorus or I'll trade you some zinc, depending on the microbe. That's why you need all these different species. I'll trade you some magnesium. I'll trade you whatever you need. Just give me carbon. I just got to have carbon. Like they're drug addicted to carbon. They got to have carbon. Okay? That exchange is going on billions of times a day. Here's the deal. You diss the soil, you turn it all up, put way too much air in there, you oxidize everything, you kill those beneficial microbes. And now you have to add synthetic fertilizer because the plant has no way of getting it.
Right.
The microbes make it plant available. They make the stuff God put in the soil plant available. It's really simple. Now, you get into deep science and the biochemistry, it gets over my head real quick. But the principles are super simple, and they work. They work. And I really believe this in my heart. You can tell I'm almost preaching now. This is the way we heal the planet. We put nutrients back in food. We grow healthier beef, healthier deer, healthier turkeys. We reduce diseases because most humans are nutrient deficient. You may eat a big steak, but you ate a cow that's wading around in a foot deep poop in a feedlot somewhere, eating a pelletized food instead of taking a bite of this and a bite of that and a bite of that and getting all the nutrients they need because they're eating a wide variety of plants. And deer need a wide variety of plants to be really healthy.
Well, Dr. Grant, thank you so much.
I'm too deep here. I'm sorry. I get going, man. I'm passionate about this.
No, it's fascinating. Like if we weren't on a time crunch, I could sit here for hours and just
I
suck it all in.
apologize. I shared with y'all I do this because I love it and I'm passionate about it.
We should get you back on.
Say it again.
Yeah, we'd love to have you back on.
We'd love to get you back on.
I'd love to come back on, guys. I'd love to come back on. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you so much for coming in today, Dr. Grant. I got to go to work. Otherwise, we'd still be talking for another hour. So thank you. And God
bless you guys. Thanks for what you're doing.
Yes, sir.
God bless you.
All right, everybody. Thank you guys for watching episode 33 of Outdoors with MSA with Anthony Jones, myself, Jonathan Abernathy, and our amazing guest, Dr. Grant Woods. Until next week, be easy.